Her husband drugged her every night. One day she pretended to swallow the pills. What she saw next was devastating. Camila thought the sleeping medication was helping her insomnia. She had no idea her husband was using it to destroy her life while she slept. The night she pretended to take those pills, she discovered a betrayal so calculated, so methodical, that it would shatter everything she believed about love, marriage, and the man she'd trusted with her entire world. Viewers, before we dive into this shocking story, do me a favor. If you're watching from Atlanta, London, Toronto, Chicago, or anywhere else in the world, drop your location in the comments right now. I want to see how far this community reaches. And while you're down there, hit that subscribe button. Here's why you should. Stories like these, real stories about real people facing unimaginable situations, they don't just entertain. They teach us something about human nature, about trust, about the masks people wear. By subscribing, you're joining a community that values truth, that appreciates storytelling, and that isn't afraid to discuss the uncomfortable realities of relationships and betrayal. Plus, tells the algorithm that content like this matters, and your comment, well, that starts conversations that might help someone else who's going through something similar. So go ahead, show some love, subscribe, like, and comment your city. I'll wait. Now let's get into what happened to Camila. The bedroom was dark except for the amber glow of the bedside lamp, its light catching on the crystal water glass and the small white pill resting in Camila Morrison's palm. She stared at it, the same way she had every night for the past 6 months, ever since her husband Darius had convinced her that her insomnia was becoming dangerous. "You need rest, baby," he'd said back then, his voice smooth and concerned. "You're working yourself into exhaustion. This will help. Doctor approved." She'd believed him. Why wouldn't she? Darius Morrison was a successful pharmaceutical sales representative, a man who networked with physicians across the metropolitan area, who understood medicine and healthcare better than most. When he'd brought home the prescription bottle with her name printed neatly on the label, she hadn't questioned it. She trusted him the way a wife should trust her husband. That trust had cost her dearly. Camila sat on the edge of their king-size bed, the silk sheets cool beneath her thighs, and turned the pill over between her fingers. Darius stood nearby, arms crossed, watching her with those dark eyes that had once made her heart race with desire, now making it race with something else entirely. Something she couldn't quite name yet. "You're stalling," he said, his tone light but edged with impatience. "Come on, Cam. You know this helps you sleep. We've been through this." She forced a smile, the kind she'd perfected over months of feeling increasingly disconnected from her own life. "I know. I'm just thinking about work tomorrow. Big presentation." "Which is exactly why you need proper rest," Darius countered, moving closer. He picked up the water glass and held it out to her, his expression shifting into something softer, more persuasive. "Take it, baby. I'll even stay up with you until you drift off. How's that?" There was a time when that offer would have comforted her. Now it sent a chill down her spine, though she couldn't articulate why. Something had been wrong for weeks now, maybe months. She'd started noticing things, small things, inconsistencies. She would wake up exhausted despite sleeping for 10 hours. Her clothes would be in different places than where she'd left them. Once, she'd found mud on the soles of her house slippers, though she had no memory of going outside. Her phone's battery would be drained by morning, even though she'd charged it fully before bed. And then there were the messages, text threads she didn't remember sending, emails drafted in her style, but with details she couldn't recall discussing. "I'm losing my mind," she told her sister Zainab 3 weeks ago over coffee at their favorite bistro in the Arts District. "Or someone's making you think you are," Zainab had replied, stirring her latte with a concerned frown. "Calm, when's the last time you felt normal? Like, truly yourself?" Camila had thought about it, really thought about it, and realized she couldn't remember. The fog had descended gradually, so slowly she hadn't noticed until she was completely submerged in it. That conversation had planted a seed of doubt, and doubt, once planted, grows quickly in darkness. Now sitting here with the pill in her palm and her husband watching her with barely concealed impatience, Camila made a decision. She brought the pill to her lips, tilted her head back, and lifted the water glass. She mimicked swallowing, let the liquid slide down her throat, then opened her mouth slightly as if checking that it had gone down. But the pill remained tucked against her cheek, hidden between gum and inner lip, a small deception that felt enormous. Darius visibly relaxed. "Good girl," he said, taking the glass from her and setting it on the nightstand. "Now lie down. I'll turn off the lamp in a few minutes." Camilla reclined against the pillows, her heart hammering so loudly she was certain he could hear it. She closed her eyes, controlled her breathing, and waited. The pill began to dissolve slightly, leaving a bitter taste that she fought not to react to. Minutes passed. 5, 10, 15. She kept her breathing steady and deep, mimicking the pattern of sleep. Beside her, she felt Darius shift his weight on the bed. The mattress dipped as he stood up. His footsteps were nearly silent on the plush carpet as he moved around the room. She heard him pick up his phone, the faint vibration of it unlocking. Then his voice, low and hushed. "Yeah, she just went under. Give me 20 minutes to make sure she's completely out. Then I'll send you the access codes." Camilla's blood turned to ice. Every instinct screamed at her to open her eyes, to confront him, but she forced herself to remain still. Her training as a corporate attorney had taught her that information was power, and right now, she needed to gather as much as possible. "No, she doesn't suspect anything," Darius continued, his voice carrying that same smooth confidence he used with everyone. "The medication's been working perfectly. She's compliant, manageable. By the time this is done, her credibility will be completely destroyed. No one will believe a word she says." The words hit her like physical blows. Compliant, manageable, destroyed. Through her closed eyelids, she could sense the lamp being switched off. Darkness enveloped the room completely. She heard Darius leave the bedroom, his footsteps receding down the hallway toward his home office. The one room in their upscale brownstone that he'd always insisted remained private. "My workspace," he'd told her when they'd first moved in 3 years ago. "I need somewhere to decompress from the chaos of work. You understand, right?" She'd understood. Or rather, she'd accepted it because that's what you did in a marriage. You respected boundaries. You trusted your partner. Now she understood something else entirely. That office wasn't a sanctuary from work. It was a command center for whatever operation he was running against her. Camilla waited another 10 minutes, counting the seconds in her head, before she carefully worked the dissolving pill out of her mouth and into a tissue she pulled from the nightstand drawer. She lay completely still for another 5 minutes, listening to the sounds of the house, the distant hum of the refrigerator, the soft whistle of wind against the windows, and underneath it all, the faint clicking of a keyboard from down the hall. Moving with excruciating slowness, she sat up. Her eyes had adjusted to the darkness enough to make out the shapes of furniture, the outline of the doorway. She swung her legs off the bed, her bare feet silent against the carpet. Her phone was charging on her nightstand. She unplugged it carefully, the tiny click of the cable disconnecting, sounding thunderous in the quiet. She checked the time. 11:47. On a typical night, the medication would have rendered her unconscious within 20 minutes of ingesting it. She would sleep heavily, dreamlessly until morning, waking with that characteristic grogginess that had become her new normal. Tonight would be different. Camilla moved to the bedroom door, which Darius had left slightly ajar. Through the gap, she could see a sliver of light coming from beneath his office door at the end of the hallway. She heard his voice again, though the words were indistinct from this distance. She considered her options. She could confront him now, demand answers, but what would that accomplish? He'd lie. He clearly skilled at deception, had been deceiving her for months. She needed evidence, concrete proof of whatever scheme he was orchestrating. Her legal mind clicked into gear, organizing thoughts and strategies. Document everything. Observe without interfering. Build a case that couldn't be disputed or explained away. She opened her phone's camera app and switched it to video mode, then turned off the flash and any sounds. She needed to be a ghost in her own home, invisible and silent. The hardwood floor in the hallway was her first challenge. It creaked in certain places, spots she knew by heart from 3 years of living here. She avoided those areas, keeping her weight distributed carefully, moving with the kind of precision that came from pure adrenaline, and determination. As she approached the office door, Darius's voice became clearer. "The accounts are ready," he was saying. "I've been documenting everything. Erratic behavior, memory lapses, emotional instability. I've got emails she supposedly sent at 3 in the morning, completely unhinged rants that she has no memory of writing. Her colleagues are already concerned. A few more weeks of this, and we'll have everything we need for a competency hearing." Camila's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. A competency hearing. He was trying to have her declared mentally incompetent. "The prescriptions are all legitimate," Darius continued, and she could hear the smile in his voice, the pride of someone who thought they'd planned the perfect crime. "Prescribed by Dr. Hammond, a licensed psychiatrist who happens to be a golf buddy of mine. He's documented her deteriorating mental state based on my reports as the concerned spouse. The medication I'm giving her? It's 3 times the recommended dose. Keeps her foggy, suggestible, and when combined with the other compounds I've been mixing in, it produces memory gaps that make her seem unstable." Someone else spoke, their voice too muffled for Camila to make out through the door. "The house is worth $2.4 million, Darius replied. "Her retirement accounts are sitting at just over $800,000. The investment portfolio is roughly $1.2 million. Once she's declared incompetent, I become her legal guardian and conservator. I'll have complete control over her assets, her medical decisions, everything. She'll end up in some memory care facility, and I'll be free to live my life with all the financial security her corporate attorney salary provided." The casual cruelty in his tone was almost worse than the words themselves. This was the man she'd married, the man she'd built a life with, discussing her destruction like it was a simple business transaction. Camila felt tears streaming down her face, hot and silent. But beneath the heartbreak, something else was building. Rage. Pure, focused, righteous rage. She steadied her shaking hands and held up her phone, angling it to capture audio more clearly. She needed every word of this confession. "What about her sister?" the other voice asked, clearer now. "Zainab's suspicious, but she can't prove anything," Darius said dismissively. "And once the competency hearing happens, her concerns will seem like denial. Family members always struggle to accept when their loved one is declining mentally. Besides, I've been subtle, planting seeds with Camila's colleagues, her friends, expressing concern as the worried husband. By the time this goes before a judge, I'll have a stack of documentation showing a pattern of deterioration." "You're certain the medication can't be traced back to you?" "Completely certain. The prescriptions are legitimate. Dr. Hammond thinks he's helping a patient with severe anxiety and insomnia. He has no idea I've been manipulating the dosage. Even if someone orders a tox screen, everything in her system is prescribed. There's no crime here, just a tragic case of mental decline that started in her early 30s. It happens." Camila wanted to scream. She wanted to burst through that door and confront him with everything she'd just heard, but her legal training held her back. This recording was good, but it might not be enough. She needed more. She needed to understand the full scope of what he'd been doing. She crept closer to the door, angling her phone to catch any additional details. Through the narrow gap, she could see Darius sitting at his desk, his back to her. The glow of his computer monitor illuminated his face and profile. On his desk were several manila folders, a laptop, and what looked like a collection of pill bottles. "I've got to go," Darius said into his phone. "I need to check on her, make sure the medication's working properly tonight. I'll call you tomorrow to finalize the timeline." Camila's heart leaped into her throat. He was ending the call. He'd be coming out any second. She moved quickly but silently, retreating down the hallway toward the bedroom. She had maybe 30 seconds before he left his office. Her mind raced. Should she pretend to be asleep in bed? What if he checked her breathing, noticed something off? No. Better to be somewhere else. Somewhere that made sense. She ducked into the master bathroom, gently closing the door until it was just barely ajar, leaving enough space to see through if needed. She positioned herself behind the door, phone still recording, and waited. Darius's office door opened. His footsteps moved down the hallway, confident and unhurried. She watched through the gap as he entered the bedroom, saw his silhouette move toward the bed. There was a long pause. She imagined him standing there looking at the empty bed, confusion setting in. "Camila?" His voice carried a note of concern that might have sounded genuine to anyone who didn't know the truth. "Baby, where are you?" He moved through the bedroom, and she heard the closet door open, then close. His footsteps approached the bathroom. Camila held her breath, pressing herself against the wall behind the door. The bathroom door swung open wider, and Darius stepped inside, flipping on the light. She was completely exposed if he turned around, but he didn't. He went straight to the shower, pulling back the curtain to check if she was there. Then he opened the linen closet as if she might be hiding among the towels. "Cam!" he called again, his voice tighter now. He left the bathroom, and she heard him moving through the house, checking rooms. This was her chance. She slipped out from behind the bathroom door and moved quickly back to the bedroom, positioning herself near the window as if she'd been standing there looking out. When Darius returned, she turned slowly, making her movements sluggish and confused, as if she were in a medicated haze. "Darius?" she mumbled, making her voice thick and drowsy. "What's happening?" Relief flooded his face, replaced quickly by concern. "Baby, you scared me. What are you doing out of bed? The medication should have you sleeping by now." She rubbed her eyes, playing the role perfectly. "I don't know. I think I heard something. Was I supposed to be in bed?" He moved toward her, placing his hands on her shoulders, guiding her back toward the mattress. "Yes, honey. You took your medication, remember? You need to sleep. You're confused right now." She let him lead her, let him tuck her back into bed like she was a child who'd wandered from her room during a nightmare. All the while her mind was razor sharp, cataloging every detail, every manipulation. "That's it," he said softly, pulling the covers up to her chin. "Close your eyes, everything's fine. You're just disoriented from the medication. It'll pass." She closed her eyes obediently, but through her lashes she watched him. He sat on the edge of the bed for several minutes, his hand resting on her arm, presumably checking her pulse or waiting for her to slip into unconsciousness. Finally satisfied, he stood and left the room, leaving the door cracked open this time, probably so he could hear if she got up again. Camila lay there in the darkness, her phone hidden beneath her pillow, still recording. She had evidence now, a confession. But she needed more. She needed to understand exactly what documentation he had created, what lies he had spread, and who else was involved in this conspiracy against her. Most importantly, she needed to ensure that when she moved against him, her strike would be absolute and devastating. Because Darius Morrison had made a critical mistake. He'd underestimated her. He'd assumed that the medication would keep her compliant and confused forever, that she'd never wake up to his manipulation. But she was awake now, fully, terribly awake, and she was going to make him regret every single pill he'd ever made her swallow. The morning light filtered through the bedroom curtains in soft golden streams, painting geometric patterns across the hardwood floor. Camila opened her eyes slowly, deliberately, maintaining the facade of grogginess that had become her unwanted signature over the past months. Beside her, Darius was already awake, propped up on one elbow, watching her with an expression that might have passed for tenderness to anyone who didn't know better. "Morning, sleepyhead," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "How'd you sleep?" She blinked slowly, as if struggling to focus. I'm not sure. Did I get up last night? I have this weird memory of standing by the window, but it feels like a dream." His smile was gentle, practiced. "You did get up, baby. The medication sometimes causes a bit of sleepwalking when you first start a new dosage. It's normal. I helped you back to bed. You don't remember?" She shook her head, playing into his narrative perfectly. "No, that's scary. What if I'd gone downstairs? What if I'd hurt myself?" "That's why I'm here," he said, his voice dripping with false reassurance. "To keep you safe. Maybe we should talk to Dr. Hammond about adjusting your prescription again. This dosage might be too strong. Or maybe it's exactly as strong as you want it," Camila thought. But outwardly, she just nodded weakly. "Maybe you're right. I feel so disconnected lately, like I'm living in a fog. I know, sweetheart, but we'll figure it out. That's what marriage is about, right? Supporting each other through difficult times." He kissed her forehead, and it took every ounce of her self-control not to recoil. "I'm going to make you some breakfast. You just take your time getting up." As soon as he left the room, Camila's expression shifted. The confusion melted away, replaced by sharp focus. She retrieved her phone from under her pillow and checked the recording from last night. 7 minutes and 43 seconds of damning audio. She'd stopped the recording after Darius had left her room, not wanting to drain her battery or risk him discovering it. She quickly created a backup of the file, uploading it to 3 separate cloud storage accounts under different email addresses she'd set up years ago for work purposes. Then she sent copies to Zainab with a message. "Don't listen to this yet. Don't react. Just keep it safe. I'll explain everything soon." Her sister's response came within seconds. "Cam, what's going on? Are you okay?" "I'm fine, trust me. I need you to do exactly what I say. Act completely normal if you see Darius. Don't let him know anything's changed." "Can you do that?" "Yes, but you're scaring me." "Good, stay scared. It'll keep you sharp. I love you." Camila deleted the message thread and cleared her cache, a habit she'd developed recently, though she hadn't understood why until last night. Some part of her subconscious had been trying to protect her, even while the medication clouded her conscious thoughts. She showered quickly, letting the hot water wash away the residue of fear and replace it with determination. In the mirror, she examined herself critically. Her face looked drawn, thinner than it had been 6 months ago. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She'd attributed it to stress from work, to the demanding caseload at Mercer, Hightower and Associates, one of the most prestigious corporate law firms in the city. Now she recognized it for what it was: systematic poisoning disguised as treatment. She dressed in a navy blue pantsuit, professional and crisp armor for the battle ahead. In her briefcase, she placed her laptop, several legal pads, and a small digital recorder she normally used for client meetings. Today, it would serve a different purpose. Downstairs, the smell of coffee and bacon filled the kitchen. Darius had set the table with her favorite mug, fresh fruit, and scrambled eggs cooked exactly how she liked them. The perfect husband performing the perfect morning routine. "You look beautiful," he said as she entered. "Feeling better?" "A little foggy still, but the shower helped." She sat down, wrapping her hands around the coffee mug. The warmth grounded her. "What's your schedule like today?" "Pretty standard. I've got meetings with physicians in the North District. Should be home by 6. What about you?" "The Thornton merger is closing this week," she said, referencing a legitimate case she was working on. "I'll probably be at the office late. Don't wait up for dinner." He frowned slightly. "Cam, you've been working so hard lately. Maybe you should consider taking some time off. Your health is more important than any case." There it was, the gentle suggestion planted like a seed. How many times had he done this? How many times had he encouraged her to step back from work, to reduce her responsibilities, to make herself smaller and more manageable? "I can't right now," she said, injecting just enough frustration into her voice. "This is a $40 million transaction. The clients are counting on me." "I just worry about you," he said, sitting across from her. "You're not yourself lately. Even your colleagues have mentioned it. Thomas called last week asking if everything was okay. He said you seemed distracted during the Henderson deposition." Camila's mind raced. Thomas Mercer was the senior partner at her firm, her mentor for the past 8 years. If Darius was planning concerns with him, her professional reputation was already under attack. "Thomas called you?" She made her voice small, uncertain. "He's concerned, baby. We all are. He asked if there was anything going on at home, any stress that might be affecting your performance." "What did you tell him?" The question came out exactly as vulnerable as she intended. "The truth, that you've been struggling with insomnia and anxiety, that we're working with doctors to find the right treatment, that I'm doing everything I can to support you." He reached across the table and took her hand. "I'm on your side, Camila. Always." She looked at their joined hands, at the platinum wedding band on his finger that matched hers, symbols of promises he'd shattered without hesitation. "I know," she whispered. "I don't know what I'd do without you." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue, but she delivered it perfectly. She saw satisfaction flicker in his eyes, the pleasure of someone whose manipulation was working exactly as planned. After breakfast, she kissed him goodbye at the door, played the role of the devoted wife sending her husband off to work. As soon as his luxury sedan disappeared around the corner, she dropped the act. Her hands stopped trembling. Her shoulders straightened. The fog she'd been performing lifted entirely. She had work to do. Her first call was to Zainab, who picked up on the first ring. "I listened to the recording," her sister said without preamble, her voice shaking with rage. "Cam, that bastard, we need to call the police right now." "No," Camila said firmly. "Not yet. The recording might not be admissible depending on state law regarding consent for recording. Even if it is, a good defense attorney could argue it was taken out of context, that I was medicated and paranoid. We need more than this." "More? He's been drugging you. He's trying to steal everything you've worked for." "Which is exactly why we need to be smart about this. Darius is careful, Zainab. He has a licensed psychiatrist involved, legitimate prescriptions, documented concerns. If we move too fast, he'll claim I'm having a mental health crisis, that I'm paranoid and delusional, and with the medication in my system, with the behavior he's documented, he might be believed." There was a long pause. "So what do we do?" "We build a case that's airtight. I need you to do some research for me. Find out everything you can about Dr. Hammond. I want to know his background, his practice, any disciplinary actions, who his associates are. Also, check if there have been any other cases of pharmaceutical representatives manipulating prescriptions for personal gain. Precedents, news stories, anything." "I'm on it. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to work," Camila said. "I'm going to go to the office and be the best attorney I've ever been. I need to prove to everyone there that I'm competent, sharp, and in control. Whatever narrative Darius has been building, I'm going to systematically dismantle it. Be careful, Cam. If he suspects you know, he won't. I've been playing roles in courtrooms for years, Zainab. I know how to perform under pressure. This is just another case, the most important case of my life." At Mercer, Hightower and Associates, the office hummed with its usual controlled chaos. Associates hurried between conference rooms with arms full of documents. Assistants fielded calls from demanding clients. The scent of expensive coffee mixed with anxiety permeated the air. Kamala walked through the glass doors with her head high, greeting colleagues by name, asking about their cases, their families. She stopped by Thomas Mercer's office, a corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the financial district. "Camila," Thomas said, looking up from his computer with surprise. "Come in. How are you feeling?" So Darius had definitely been talking to him. "I'm well, thank you. I actually wanted to discuss the Thornton closing. I've reviewed the final documents, and I have some concerns about the liability clauses in Section 12. For the next 20 minutes, she walked him through a detailed analysis she'd prepared, pointing out potential risks and proposing alternative language. It was some of her best work, sharp and thorough, the kind of analysis that had made her a junior partner at 34. Thomas leaned back in his chair when she finished, studying her carefully. "That's excellent work, Camila. Very thorough." "Thank you. I know there have been some concerns about my performance recently." She met his gaze directly. "I want to assure you that I'm committed to this firm and to our clients. I've been dealing with some health issues, but I'm managing them effectively now. Darius mentioned you've been having trouble sleeping, that the stress might be getting to you. My husband is protective," she said carefully. "Sometimes overly so. The insomnia was an issue, but I'm handling it. I've actually been rethinking my medication regimen. I think what I was taking was too strong, leaving me foggy. I'm planning to speak with my doctor about alternatives." This was important. She needed to establish on record that she was questioning the medication, that she recognized it was affecting her negatively. When the truth came out, this conversation would be evidence that she'd been aware and taking steps to correct the situation. "Well, you certainly seem focused today," Thomas said. "The Thornton analysis is exactly what I needed to see. Why don't you take the lead on the closing? Show everyone that Camila Morrison is back on her game." "I'd appreciate that opportunity." For the rest of the day, she worked with intense focus. She took detailed notes in meetings, caught errors in contracts, provided insight on complex regulatory questions. She made sure to interact with as many colleagues as possible, to be visible and competent. During lunch, she met with her personal banker at a cafe 3 blocks from the office. Margaret Chen had handled Camila's accounts for 6 years and knew her financial situation intimately. "Margaret, I need to make some changes to my accounts," Camila said once they'd ordered. "I want to add additional security measures. 2-factor authentication on everything, alerts for any transactions over $500, and I need to review who has access or authorization on each account. Margaret pulled out her tablet. Of course. Let me pull up your profiles. You have your primary checking, savings, your investment account, and the joint account with your husband. The joint account, Camilla said. When was that open? About 4 months ago. You and Mr. Morrison came in together. You said you wanted to simplify household finances. Camilla had no memory of this. None. Do you remember if I seemed myself that day? Margaret's brow furrowed. You seemed a bit distracted, actually. Your husband did most of the talking. You signed the paperwork, but you seemed tired. I remember thinking you looked like you needed a vacation. What's the current balance in that joint account? Margaret tapped her screen, then her expression changed. It shows $68,000. $68,000? Camilla's stomach dropped. Margaret, I need you to pull up all the transfers into that account. Where did that money come from? More tapping. Margaret's face grew increasingly concerned. It looks like there have been regular transfers from your personal savings over the past 4 months. $5,000 here, $10,000 there. The largest was $20,000 about 6 weeks ago. Money Camilla had no recollection of moving. Money that was being systematically siphoned into an account Darius could access. I need to freeze that joint account immediately, Camilla said, keeping her voice steady through sheer force of will. And I need a complete transaction history for the past 6 months on all my accounts. Every deposit, every withdrawal, every transfer. Camilla, is everything all right? Should we be concerned about? Margaret, I need you to document this conversation. Note the date, time, and that I came to you with concerns about unauthorized access to my accounts. I'm going to ask you some questions, and I need you to answer honestly. Did I ever seem confused or disoriented during our meetings? Margaret hesitated. Sometimes. There was one meeting where you asked me the same question 3 times. Another time, you couldn't remember your account password even though you'd used it the week before. I thought maybe you were just stressed from work. Did my husband ever come to any meetings without me? Yes, twice. He said you'd sent him to handle some transactions because you were too busy. He had your power of attorney paperwork, so I processed his requests. Power of attorney. Camilla felt ice in her veins. What transactions? He moved funds between accounts, set up automatic payments. Nothing that seemed unusual for a spouse managing household finances. Margaret, I need copies of everything. Every piece of paperwork I signed, every power of attorney document, every transaction record. Can you have that ready by tomorrow? Of course. Camilla, should I be worried? Is there something illegal happening? I'm not sure yet, Camilla said honestly, but I need to understand the full picture. And Margaret, don't mention this conversation to anyone, including my husband. If he calls asking about my accounts, tell him you need written authorization from me before discussing any details. Back at the office, Camilla locked her door and spread out the information she'd gathered. She created a timeline starting 6 months ago when Darius had first introduced the sleeping medication. She noted every strange occurrence, every memory gap, every piece of evidence that pointed to systematic manipulation. The joint account opened 4 months ago. The power of attorney documents she didn't remember signing. The conversations with Thomas Mercer about her declining performance. The prescriptions from Dr. Hammond. The phone call last night about the competency hearing. It was a pattern. Methodical, calculated, and it had almost worked. Her phone buzzed with a text from Zainab. Found something on Dr. Hammond. Call me. Camilla stepped out onto the balcony attached to her office, where she could speak privately. What did you find? Dr. Edmund Hammond has been practicing psychiatry for 15 years. Clean record, no disciplinary actions. But here's the interesting part. He's on the board of directors for Nexus Pharmaceuticals. Let me guess, Camilla said. Darius's company. Bingo! They've worked together for at least 8 years. Hammond prescribes medications that Nexus manufactures, and Darius has been his sales representative for the entire region. They play golf together, attend conferences together. They're not just professional associates, Cam. They're friends. Which means Hammond might not be an unwitting participant, Camilla said slowly. He might know exactly what Darius is doing. There's more. I found 3 malpractice suits filed against Hammond in the past decade. All were settled out of court with non-disclosure agreements, but I managed to find some public records from the initial filings. In each case, the plaintiff claimed Hammond prescribed excessive dosages of medication, leading to cognitive impairment. One case involved a woman whose husband was trying to gain control of her assets. Camila's hand tightened on her phone. So this isn't the first time. It might be a pattern. The cases were spread out over years, different circumstances, but the core allegation was the same. Hammond collaborated with someone close to the patient to medicate them into incompetence. "We need proof," Camila said. "We need something that directly connects Hammond to Darius beyond their professional relationship. Something that shows intent to harm me specifically." "How do we get that?" Camila thought for a moment, her legal mind working through possibilities. "Tonight, Darius thinks I'm working late. Instead, I'm going to his office at home. There were folders on his desk last night, documents. I need to see what's in them. Cam, that's dangerous. What if he comes home early? Then I'll deal with it. But I need to know the full scope of what he's planned. The recording from last night gives us motive and confession, but we need the documentation. We need his paper trail." "I don't like this." "Neither do I, but we don't have a choice. He's been building this case against me for months. I need to know every piece of evidence he has so I can refute it." That evening, Camila left the office at 7, making sure several colleagues saw her go. She drove home through rush hour traffic, her mind reviewing and revising her plan with each mile. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, beautiful and indifferent to the human drama unfolding below. At home, she parked in the garage and entered through the kitchen. The house was dark and silent. Darius wouldn't be home for at least an hour, possibly longer if his meetings ran late as they often did. She went upstairs and changed out of her suit into comfortable clothes, dark jeans, and a black sweater. If she needed to move quickly, she wanted to be prepared. She grabbed a flashlight from the emergency kit in the hall closet, then stood outside Darius's office door. Her hand hesitated on the knob. This was it. Once she crossed this threshold, once she saw whatever evidence he'd compiled, there was no going back to pretending. The knowledge would change her, harden her into something different than the woman who'd trusted her husband with her life. She turned the knob. The door opened. The office was exactly as she'd glimpsed it last night. A large desk with a high-end computer setup, built-in bookshelves filled with pharmaceutical reference guides and medical journals, and a filing cabinet in the corner. The folders were still on the desk, arranged in a neat stack. Camila pulled out her phone and began taking pictures, documenting the office exactly as she found it. Then she opened the first folder. Inside were printed emails, text messages, and handwritten notes. Her heart sank as she read through them. Messages she'd supposedly sent to colleagues at 3 a.m, rambling and incoherent. Texts to friends that made no sense. Notes about incidents she didn't remember, documented by Darius with dates and times. Camila became aggressive when I suggested she was tired. Threw a glass across the kitchen. Doesn't remember the incident the next day. She'd never thrown a glass. Never. But here was a photo of a shattered glass on the floor, dated and time-stamped. Found Camila wandering outside in her nightgown at 2 a.m. She was disoriented and couldn't explain how she got there. Another lie, but documented as fact. The folder was a masterpiece of fabrication, each piece of evidence carefully constructed to paint a picture of mental deterioration. And mixed in with the fabrications were real incidents, the memory gaps and confusion she'd actually experienced, the ones caused by the medication he'd been giving her. The second folder contained medical records from Dr. Hammond, psychiatric evaluations detailing her alleged symptoms, paranoia, memory loss, mood swings, auditory hallucinations. Every session note described a patient spiraling into incompetence. But Camila had never had a session with Dr. Hammond. She'd never met the man. These were completely falsified medical records, created to support a competency hearing that hadn't happened yet. The third folder was financial. Spreadsheets detailing her assets, valuations of the house and her investment portfolio, projections of what would be available once he gained conservatorship. He'd even calculated the cost of memory care facilities, comparing prices and amenities. He'd been shopping for where to warehouse her once he stole her life. Camila photographed every page, her hands steady despite the rage building in her chest. She worked methodically, professionally, treating it like discovery in a lawsuit. because that's exactly what it was. She was almost finished when she heard it. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Her blood turned to ice. She checked her watch. 8:15. He was home early. She quickly closed the folders, arranging them exactly as she'd found them, and shut down the flashlight. She slipped out of the office, closing the door silently behind her, and moved quickly down the hallway to the bedroom. She could hear the garage door opening, the sound of his car engine cutting off. She had maybe 60 seconds. In the bedroom, she threw off her dark clothes and pulled on pajamas, then climbed into bed, pulling the covers up. She grabbed the pill bottle from her nightstand, the one Darius had been giving her, and tucked 2 pills into her cheek, just as she'd done the night before. She heard his footsteps on the stairs, moving through the house. He was checking rooms, she realized, looking for her. The bedroom door opened. "Camila, baby, you home?" She stirred as if waking from sleep and blinked at him groggily. "Darius? What time is it?" His expression was confused. "It's 8:15. You said you were working late." "I was. I felt so tired. I came home early and I must have fallen asleep. The medication..." She let her voice trail off, uncertain and disoriented. He studied her carefully and she could see him processing, trying to determine if this was genuine or performance. "You took your medication already?" "I think so. I don't remember. Everything's fuzzy." She made herself sound small, vulnerable, exactly what he expected. After a long moment, he smiled. "That's okay, sweetheart. The medication makes you forgetful sometimes. Why don't you go back to sleep? I'll make sure you're taken care of." She nodded and closed her eyes, listening as he left the room. But she didn't sleep. She lay there in the darkness, the pills still tucked in her cheek, and planned her next move. Because now she had evidence. Now she had documentation. And most importantly, now she had a plan to destroy the man who'd tried to destroy her. Tomorrow the counterattack would begin. The morning sun filtered through the conference room windows at Mercer, Hightower and Associates, casting long shadows across the polished mahogany table. Camila sat at the head of the table, her posture perfect, her navy Armani suit crisp and commanding. Around her sat 3 people she trusted with her life: Zainab, her sister, and now her primary investigator; Marcus Chen, a private detective she'd worked with on corporate espionage cases; and Diane Rothberg, a criminal defense attorney with a reputation for dismantling even the most carefully constructed frauds. "Let's begin," Camila said, her voice steady and professional. She'd spent the entire night preparing this presentation, organizing evidence, building her case the way she'd built hundreds of cases for corporate clients. Except this time, she was both the attorney and the victim. She pulled up a slide on the large monitor at the end of the room. 6 months ago, my husband Darius Morrison initiated a systematic campaign to have me declared mentally incompetent so he could gain control of my financial assets, which total approximately $4.3 million when you include real estate, investment accounts, retirement funds, and personal property. Marcus Chen, a middle-aged man with sharp eyes and graying temples, leaned forward. "Walk us through the timeline." Camila advanced to the next slide. It began with the introduction of sleep medication. Darius, who works as a senior pharmaceutical sales representative for Nexus Pharmaceuticals, brought home a prescription allegedly written by Dr. Edmund Hammond, a psychiatrist. I was told I had severe insomnia and anxiety that required pharmaceutical intervention. "Did you actually have insomnia?" Diane asked, taking notes on her legal pad. "Mild difficulty sleeping occasionally, like most professionals with demanding careers. Nothing that warranted prescription medication, but I trusted my husband. I trusted that he had my best interests at heart." Camila paused, allowing herself a moment to feel the betrayal before pushing it aside. Emotion had no place in this presentation. The medication he gave me wasn't what was on the label, or rather it was, but in doses 3 times the recommended amount, combined with additional compounds designed to produce memory gaps, confusion, and suggestibility. She advanced to the next slide, showing the pill bottle and its label. "This prescription is in my name, prescribed by Dr. Hammond for anxiety and sleep disorders. 30 milligrams of a sedative hypnotic medication. The standard dose for someone my size would be 10 milligrams. Darius was giving me 3 pills per night, telling me it was 1. How do you know this? Marcus asked. 2 days ago, I pretended to take the medication, but retained it in my mouth. I experienced none of the severe sedation, memory loss, or confusion that had become my nightly pattern. Last night, I did the same thing. I took the pills he gave me to a laboratory this morning. She pulled up the lab results on screen. Analysis shows each pill contains not 30 milligrams, but 90 milligrams of the sedative, plus traces of a secondary compound used to treat severe psychosis. That medication, in someone who doesn't have psychosis, produces hallucinations, disorientation, and paranoid ideation. Diane's eyes widened. He was manufacturing symptoms. Exactly. He was creating the very mental instability he was claiming to be concerned about. And he was documenting it. Camila opened one of the folders she'd photographed, displaying pages on the monitor. These are incident reports he compiled over the past 6 months. Alleged aggressive behavior, memory lapses, erratic actions. Some of these incidents are complete fabrications. Others are real experiences I had while under the influence of the medication he was secretly overdosing me with. Zainab spoke up, her voice tight with controlled anger. Show them the medical records. Camila advanced to the next section. These are psychiatric evaluation reports, supposedly from Dr. Edmund Hammond, documenting my deteriorating mental state over 23 sessions. The problem is, I've never had a single session with Dr. Hammond. I've never even met the man. These records are entirely falsified. That's medical fraud, Diane said, her pen moving rapidly across the page. That's criminal. We can bring charges against both Darius and Dr. Hammond. There's more, Camila said. Marcus, tell them what you found about Hammond. Marcus pulled out his own folder, spreading photographs and documents across the table. Dr. Edmund Hammond and Darius Morrison have been business associates for 8 years. Hammond sits on the board of Nexus Pharmaceuticals, the company Darius works for. They have significant financial entanglements. More importantly, this isn't the first time Hammond has been accused of this kind of scheme. I found records of 3 previous malpractice suits, all settled with non-disclosure agreements. In each case, the plaintiff alleged that Hammond prescribed excessive medication leading to cognitive impairment, and in each case, there was a spouse or family member who stood to gain financially from the patient's incompetence. So it's a pattern, Diane said, a systematic operation. How much did they stand to gain from this? Camila pulled up a financial spreadsheet. According to the documents I found in Darius's office, he calculated that once I was declared incompetent and he became my legal guardian and conservator, he would have immediate access to approximately $1.8 million in liquid assets. Over time, through the sale of our home and the liquidation of long-term investments, he would gain control of the full $4.3 million. He'd already begun transferring money from my personal accounts into a joint account he opened, using a power of attorney I don't remember signing. She pulled up bank statements. $68,000 has been moved so far. Small amounts spread over months, designed not to trigger any alerts or raise suspicion. Did you freeze the accounts? Marcus asked. Yesterday. I also revoked any power of attorney documents, changed all my passwords, and added biometric security to every financial account. He no longer has access to anything. Diane looked up from her notes. What about the recording, the confession? Camila played the audio file from 2 nights ago, the one where Darius detailed his entire plan to the person on the phone. The room fell silent as his voice filled the space, casual and confident as he described destroying his wife's life. The accounts are ready. I've been documenting everything. Erratic behavior, memory lapses, emotional instability. When it finished, Diane sat back in her chair. That's damning, absolutely damning. But we need to verify its authenticity, establish chain of custody, and determine if it's admissible in your state. Even if it's not admissible in court, though, it's devastating for any civil case. What's our next move? Zainab asked. Do we go to the police? File charges? Camila looked at each of them in turn. We could. We have evidence of fraud, forgery, illegal administration of medication, conspiracy to commit financial exploitation. But here's what I'm thinking. If we go to the police now, Darius will lawyer up immediately. Hammond will claim the prescriptions were legitimate medical judgments. They'll say I'm paranoid, that my allegations are proof of the mental instability they've been documenting. It becomes a he said, she said situation. And given that I have their medication in my system, Given the documented behavior they've manufactured, it could go either way. So what do you want to do? Marcus asked. Camila smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. I want to give them enough rope to hang themselves. I want to catch them in the act of executing their plan, with irrefutable evidence that can't be explained away or defended. I want this so airtight that no attorney on earth could get them acquitted. Diane leaned forward, intrigued. What did you have in mind? For the next hour, Camilla laid out her strategy. It was bold, risky, and required perfect timing. But if it worked, it would destroy Darius and Hammond completely while protecting her assets, her reputation, and her freedom. Are you sure about this? Zainab asked when Camilla finished. If something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong, Camilla said with absolute certainty. I've spent 8 years as a corporate litigator building cases against companies with teams of lawyers and unlimited resources. Darius is smart, but he's not smarter than me, and he made one critical mistake. What's that? Marcus asked. He underestimated me. He assumed the medication would keep me compliant forever. He thought I'd never wake up to what he was doing. But I did wake up, and now I'm going to show him exactly what happens when you try to destroy a woman who knows how to fight back. That evening, Camilla returned home to find Darius cooking dinner, something he rarely did. The kitchen smelled of garlic and wine, and soft jazz played from the speakers. He'd set the table with candles and their good china. What's all this? She asked, setting down her briefcase. I thought we could use a nice evening together, he said, smiling warmly. You've been so stressed lately, and I know I haven't been as attentive as I should be. I want to take care of you. She recognized this for what it was, manipulation, an attempt to keep her compliant and trusting. That's sweet. Let me change out of my work clothes. Upstairs, she quickly texted Zainab. He's being extra attentive. Probably means something's happening soon. Stay alert. The response came immediately. Marcus has eyes on Hammond's office. I'm monitoring all your accounts. We're ready. Camila changed into comfortable clothes and returned downstairs. Throughout dinner, Darius was charming and attentive, asking about her day, laughing at her stories, playing the role of devoted husband with practiced ease. After dinner, he brought out her medication as he always did, setting the pill and a glass of water on the table in front of her. Don't forget, he said gently. She picked up the pill, her heart racing despite her calm exterior. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about this medication. I've been thinking it might be too strong. I'm going to make an appointment with Dr. Hammond to discuss alternatives. Something flickered in Darius's eyes, too quick to identify, but definitely there. I think that's a good idea. In fact, I can call him tomorrow and set something up. He knows your case intimately. Of course he does, Camila thought. That would be helpful, thank you. She brought the pill to her lips, took a sip of water, and mimicked swallowing. The pill remained tucked in her cheek as she set down the glass. I'm exhausted. I think I'll turn in early. Want me to come up with you? No, finish your wine. I'll be fine. In the bedroom, she spit the pill into a tissue and added it to the growing collection she'd been saving as evidence. Then she lay in bed with her phone, pretending to sleep while actually monitoring the security cameras Marcus had helped her install throughout the house earlier that day. Tiny, nearly invisible cameras that would capture everything. An hour passed. Then 2. At 11:30, she heard Darius on the phone in his office, his voice low but urgent. She accessed the audio from the camera in his office, listening through her earbuds. She wants to change her medication, Darius was saying. She's asking questions. The response was inaudible, but she could guess it was Hammond. No, I don't think she suspects anything specific. She just says it's making her too groggy. But we need to move up the timeline. I want to file for the competency hearing this week. More inaudible response. I have enough documentation. 23 sessions worth of evaluations, incident reports, financial mismanagement. Everything we need. The judge will see a clear pattern of deterioration. Camila's fingers flew across her phone, sending messages to her team. He's moving up the timeline, wants to file this week. Diane's response, perfect, let him file. We'll be ready. The next morning, Camila went to work as usual, but left early, telling her assistant she had a medical appointment. Instead, she met Marcus Chen at a nondescript office building across town. Everything's set up, Marcus said, leading her into a conference room equipped with surveillance equipment. We have cameras and audio in Hammond's office, courtesy of a cleaning crew that's actually my team. When Darius and Hammond meet today, we'll have everything on tape. How did you know they're meeting today? Marcus grinned. I may have sent Hammond a text from Darius's clone number suggesting an urgent meeting to discuss accelerating your case. He responded confirming for 2 o'clock. Camila had to smile. That's why you're the best. At 2 o'clock, they watched on the monitors as Darius entered Hammond's office. The psychiatrist was a distinguished-looking man in his 50s with silver hair and an expensive suit. His office was decorated with prestigious diplomas and awards, the image of respectability and success. We have a problem, Darius said without preamble, sitting in the chair across from Hammond's desk. Camila is starting to question the medication. She wants to meet with you to discuss alternatives. Hammond leaned back, fingers steepled. That's actually perfect timing. A session with her would add authenticity to the medical records. I can document her paranoia, her distrust of treatment, her resistance to medical intervention. It strengthens our case. You think we should let her come in? Absolutely. I'll conduct a legitimate evaluation, document her genuine responses, and frame them within the narrative we've already established. When this goes before a judge, we'll have real session notes to support the fabricated ones. It makes the entire medical history more credible. Darius nodded slowly. And the medication dosage? We need to increase it one more time. Push her into a more obvious crisis. Something public, witnessed by multiple people. If she has a breakdown at her law firm, in front of colleagues and clients, it becomes undeniable. What about side effects? If we push too hard, the medications I've prescribed are all legitimate for anxiety and insomnia. We're just using therapeutic dosages that are on the higher end of acceptable. If she experiences adverse effects, it's simply an unfortunate reaction, not malpractice. Legally, I'm completely protected. In the surveillance room, Camila felt cold rage settling over her. They were discussing her destruction with the casual efficiency of businessmen planning a merger. How much longer until we can file? Darius asked. I'd say one more incident, properly documented, and we're ready. 2 weeks at most. Once the competency hearing is scheduled, we'll petition for emergency conservatorship based on her danger to herself and others. You'll have control within a month. And the assets? Hammond smiled. That's not my area of expertise. But I understand you've been positioning yourself well financially. Everything's ready. The joint accounts, the power of attorney, the documented mismanagement. Once I have conservatorship, I can make financial decisions on her behalf. The house can be sold, the retirement accounts liquidated for her care. It's all perfectly legal. What about her sister? Zainab's been asking questions. Zainab has no legal standing. Concerned family members always push back when a loved one is declining. It actually supports our narrative. Denial is common in these situations. They continued talking for another 20 minutes, refining their strategy, discussing timeline and execution. Every word was captured in perfect digital clarity. When Darius finally left, Camila turned to Marcus. Do we have everything? Video, audio, multiple angles. It's airtight. Then it's time to end this. The next morning, Camila walked into the office of the district attorney, Rebecca Thornton, a woman she'd worked with on several corporate fraud cases. With her were Diane Rothberg, Marcus Chen, and Zainab, along with boxes of evidence and hours of surveillance footage. Rebecca, Camila said as they settled into the conference room, I need to report a crime. Multiple crimes, actually. Conspiracy, fraud, forgery, illegal administration of controlled substances, and attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Rebecca, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, looked at the assembled group with interest. I'm listening. For the next 3 hours, they presented the case, the timeline, the medication analysis, the falsified medical records, the financial manipulation, the surveillance footage of Darius and Hammond discussing their scheme in explicit detail, the recorded phone conversation from the first night Camila had pretended to take the pills. By the end, Rebecca was leaning forward, her expression intense. This is one of the most well-documented cases of financial exploitation I've ever seen. The surveillance footage alone is damning. When they discuss increasing the medication to cause a public breakdown, that's conspiracy to commit assault. What are our next steps? Diane asked. We bring them in, both of them. We execute search warrants on Hammond's office and your home to seize the physical evidence before they can destroy it. We freeze Darius's assets, investigate the financial transactions. This is going to be a major case. I want to be there when you arrest him," Camila said quietly. Rebecca looked at her for a long moment. "That's unusual, but given the circumstances, I'll allow it. However, you need to understand, once this starts, it's going to get ugly. They'll fight back. They'll try to claim you're unstable, that this is a paranoid delusion, that the evidence is fabricated. Let them try," Camila said. "I have 8 years of exemplary work as a corporate attorney, colleagues who will testify to my competence, and I've been documenting my own recovery over the past week. I have cognitive function tests, time-stamped journal entries showing clear thinking, work product that demonstrates my abilities. I'm ready for whatever they throw at me." "And," Diane added, "we have their own words convicting them. That surveillance footage is irrefutable." Rebecca nodded. "All right, we move tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. We'll coordinate simultaneous arrests and search warrants." That night, Camila slept in the guest bedroom, telling Darius she had a headache and didn't want to disturb him with her tossing and turning. In reality, she wanted distance from him, wanted these last few hours before his world collapsed. She lay in the darkness, thinking about the past 6 months, the confusion, the fear, the slow erosion of her sense of self. The nights she'd questioned her own sanity, wondered if she really was losing her mind. But she'd survived. More than survived, she'd fought back. At 5 a.m., she dressed carefully in a charcoal gray suit, professional and authoritative. She applied makeup with precision, making sure she looked composed and competent. When she looked in the mirror, she saw not a victim, but a woman who had reclaimed her power. At 5:45, there was a knock at the door. She opened it to find Detective Sarah Morrison and 3 uniformed officers, along with Rebecca Thornton. "Mrs. Morrison," Detective Morrison said formally, "we have a warrant for the arrest of Darius Morrison and a warrant to search these premises. Where is your husband?" "Upstairs. Bedroom at the end of the hall." She followed as they climbed the stairs. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. They entered the bedroom where Darius was just waking up, confused by the noise. "Darius Morrison," Detective Morrison said, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, illegal administration of controlled substances, forgery, and attempted financial exploitation. You have the right to remain silent." Darius's eyes found Camila standing in the doorway. The confusion on his face transformed into shock, then understanding, then something that might have been respect. "You knew," he said as the officers handcuffed him. "You figured it out." "I figured it out," she confirmed, her voice steady. "Did you really think you could drug me into submission? That I'd just disappear into whatever facility you'd chosen for me while you spent my money?" "Camila, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. I have recordings of everything. Your phone calls, your meetings with Hammond, your plans to increase my medication until I had a public breakdown. It's over, Darius." As they let him out, he looked back at her one more time. "I underestimated you." "Yes," she said simply. "You did." Across town, Dr. Edmund Hammond was also being arrested in his upscale home. His office was being searched, his medical records seized, his financial accounts frozen. By noon, the story had hit the news. Prominent psychiatrist and pharmaceutical representative arrested in elaborate scheme to defraud wife. The details were shocking enough to dominate the news cycle. A trusted husband, a respected doctor, a conspiracy to drive a successful attorney into incompetence to steal her wealth. Camila's phone rang constantly. Colleagues offering support, friends expressing shock, reporters requesting interviews. She ignored most of them, focusing instead on the work that still needed to be done. 2 weeks later, she sat in her attorney's office as Diane reviewed the criminal charges that had been filed. Darius is facing 15 to 20 years. Hammond is looking at similar charges, plus the revocation of his medical license. The forensic accountants found evidence that this wasn't their first time running this scheme. There are at least 4 other victims over the past decade, women whose families settled quietly rather than face a public trial. "Will those cases be reopened?" Camila asked. "The DA is reaching out to them now. Your courage in fighting back has given others the chance for justice too." 3 months later, Camila stood in her newly renovated home office, the one that used to be Darius's private domain. She'd torn out everything, rebuilt the space into something bright and open, with floor-to-ceiling windows that let in natural light. On her desk was a laptop showing the first chapter of the book she was writing, Prescribed Betrayal: How I Survived My Husband's Attempt to Steal My Life. The advance from the publisher had been substantial. More importantly, the book would help other women recognize the signs of this kind of systematic abuse. Her phone buzzed with a text from Zainab. Jury selection starts tomorrow. You ready? I'm ready, she typed back. She'd been ready since the moment she'd pretended to swallow that pill and discovered the truth. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Camila testified for 2 days, walking the jury through every detail of Darius's scheme. She was calm, articulate, and devastating. The surveillance footage was played, showing Darius and Hammond casually discussing how to destroy her. The falsified medical records were presented, the medication analysis, the financial manipulation. The defense tried to paint her as a paranoid wife who'd turned against her loving husband during a mental health crisis. But her recovery, documented thoroughly over the months since she'd stopped taking the medication, proved otherwise. Her colleagues testified to her competence, her sharp legal mind, her steady judgment. On the final day of testimony, the prosecution played the recording from the night she'd first pretended to take the pills. Darius's voice filled the courtroom. She's compliant, manageable. By the time this is done, her credibility will be completely destroyed. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Darius was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. Hammond received 22 years and the permanent revocation of his medical license. Both were ordered to pay restitution, though Camila had already frozen and recovered all of her assets. After the sentencing, Camila stood on the courthouse steps with Zainab, Diane, and Marcus. Reporters crowded around, cameras flashing, microphones extended. Mrs. Morrison, how does it feel to get justice? She looked directly into the cameras, thinking of all the women who might be watching, women who might be experiencing their own version of systematic abuse and wondering if they were crazy. It feels like reclaiming my life, she said clearly. My husband tried to convince me I was losing my mind. He nearly succeeded, but I trusted my instincts, I gathered evidence, and I fought back. To anyone watching who feels confused, who's questioning their own sanity, who's being told they're overreacting or paranoid, trust yourself. Document everything. Reach out for help. You're not crazy, and you're not alone. The questions continued, but she was done. She'd said what needed to be said. 6 months later, Camila stood in front of a packed auditorium at the National Domestic Violence Conference. Her book had become a bestseller, sparking conversations about financial abuse, medical manipulation, and the insidious nature of gaslighting. The most dangerous thing about this type of abuse, she told the audience, is that it's so calculated, so methodical, that by the time you realize what's happening, you've already been convinced you can't trust your own perception of reality. But here's what I learned. Your instincts are your power. That small voice that says something's wrong, listen to it. That moment of clarity in the fog, act on it. She paused, looking out at the hundreds of faces watching her. I was fortunate. I had resources, legal knowledge, and a support system. But not everyone does. That's why I've established the Morrison Foundation for Financial Abuse Prevention. We provide legal assistance, forensic accounting services, and therapeutic support for people experiencing systematic financial exploitation. Because everyone deserves to fight back. Everyone deserves justice. The applause was thunderous. That evening, back in her home, Camila poured herself a glass of wine and walked out onto her balcony. The city stretched before her, lights twinkling in the darkness like possibilities. Her phone buzzed with a message from a woman who'd attended her talk. You saved my life today. I've been taking pills my husband gives me for anxiety, and I've been so confused. I'm going to the police tomorrow. Thank you for your courage. Camila smiled and typed back, You're saving your own life. I'm just showing you it's possible. Be strong. Document everything. You've got this. She set down the phone and looked up at the stars. A year ago, she'd been drowning, manipulated and drugged, her life slowly being stolen by the man she trusted most. Now she was free, powerful, and using her experience to help others. Darius had tried to break her. Instead, he'd forged her into something stronger than she'd ever been before. The medication he'd used to control her was gone from her system now, completely metabolized and eliminated. Her mind was sharp, her memories clear, her sense of self restored. She'd reclaimed everything he'd tried to take. Her assets, her reputation, her future. But more than that, she'd reclaimed herself. Viewers, Camila's story is a reminder that abuse can wear many faces. Some so subtle you don't recognize them until you're already trapped. But recognition is the first step to freedom. If you or someone you know is experiencing manipulation, financial abuse, or gaslighting, please reach out for help. Resources are available. You are not alone, and you are not crazy. Trust your instincts, document everything, and never underestimate your own strength. What do you think? Did Camila handle this situation the right way? Should she have gone to the police immediately? Or was she right to build an airtight case first? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, if it taught you something or opened your eyes to a form of abuse you hadn't considered before, do me a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, because awareness saves lives and your engagement helps these important stories reach people who need them most. Stay safe out there, everyone.